Hey, I'm George from Music Support, the charity that helps anyone working in the music and live events industry struggling with addiction and mental health challenges. I am joined today by an incredible musician, Daudi Matsiko, and Daudi is going to be talking about his own experiences of psychosis and being diagnosed with bipolar disorder. So, Daudi, thank you so much for joining today. I know that you're incredibly busy at the moment. You've got loads of exciting projects going on.
Yeah. It's like yeah.
Yeah,
I always think business is a bit like feast and famine at the moment. We're building, so it's cool.
good, good. Right, so the first question I wanted to ask you really is about your diagnosis journey. So your experience as a psychosis and when that started, and then when you were diagnosed with bipolar, and was that really difficult for you to be diagnosed? So your whole journey into finding out what was going on for you.
Mm. Yeah, so my journey with like depression and bipolar and psychosis, it would have started. The first time I experienced depression was 2009, or like end 2009-ish, around that time. My last year of university, I suffered from huge depression. Like I didn't know what it was or how to deal with it. And that continued. And then my first episode of psychosis was really around 2012, the beginning of that year. And I had several breaks, psychotic breaks or manic, really hypomania. And then there was one big chunk of psychosis. But I was very manic in 2012. I was in sort of, I guess, a personal crisis. Um, and that kind of reshaped my entire life in terms of how I do things. And I didn't get my bipolar diagnosis really until it was kind of a surprise actually. It was very vague. Everything was vague. Like when I was unwell the first time in recovery, after the incident in 2012, I'd asked my doctor, like, what is this? And he'd be like, I don't know, like we don't want to put a label on it. And then I got a letter in 2015. I had great support between 2012 and sort of 2016. I had really good support with the NHS. I just had a very good doctor, a very good psychiatrist, who was just or psychotherapist, psychiatrist. I always get those two confused, those two terms.
Yeah,
But
yes, it would have
yeah,
been a psychiatrist. Yeah,
yeah. My psychiatrist, she was absolutely phenomenal, and I was given loads of support. Like, I wasn't playing music when I got unwell. I was, but I wasn't releasing anything, and I was very down on the idea of having like a career. Like I wanted one, but I felt like I was past it, weirdly enough. And when I got ill, the crisis team, one of the nurses was a guitar player and in a band and a singer. And he took me to like an open mic. He was like, "Let's go to an open mic, bro." And so we went to an open mic, and but my point being, my psychiatrist, and the team that helped me recover the first time, were just incredible, and that actually weirdly helped me. That directed me back to music. Now, yeah, so in 2016 or 2015, I can't remember which, I got a letter just saying that my bipolar was in remission. And I was like, I've got bipolar and it's in remission. Great. Like um, so frustratingly, yes, I was off meds and I was just living life. Obviously, I kind of I I think there's only been um like my journey with like recreational drugs and things like that. Like I haven't taken anything serious since 2011. I kind of stopped when my health kind of made its made yeah when my health reared its ugly head and was like, hey, look after me better. And so yeah, 20 so I kind of carried on the straight and narrow. and then I made an album in 2018. Between 2018 and 2020, I was recording my debut album. Self-produced it, and at the end of the process in 2020, I had another breakdown. So and then that included psychosis to a pretty harsh degree, and it turns out my bipolar isn't in right remission, and I don't even think that's a thing. I'm not. I don't know if that's It doesn't. So I'm still figuring out. This year has been sort of the first time I've been keen to take more of an interest in bipolar. It's always just been something I've weirdly I've either been incredibly afraid of it and not wanting to look at it at all, and just sort of it's fine. I don't need to do anything about this. It's just like a random thing that happens because I only have a breakdown on average like every 5 to 8 years. So it's not I'm fine most of the time, and then I'll go through like a period of depression, and sometimes it's circumstantial, sometimes it's harder to define, and then yeah, so I'm still learning. I've rambled on a bit. So yeah, I'm kind of trying to take more ownership over my recovery and journey with it now, because it's so serious when I do have episodes. Like it knocks me out for like 3 years, like and I go from being like a healthy weight to incredibly overweight on the medications that I take, and it's really it does a number on your self-esteem. Like I felt like this particular the last like 3 years, like I've not like put myself out there in terms of like the dating world, all that kind of stuff. I've just kind of sat back and just just tried to survive and tread water. And I don't think that's the way to do things. I think but yeah, I can't afford like as a working musician to be out of the game for 3 years, or or just be sort of immobilized, and so it's it's a journey. Sorry, I've rambled on, but I hope that's answered some of your questions. I think you asked me one thing and I've talked for an hour, so apologies.
That was awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, so when you first experienced psychosis, you hadn't had your bipolar diagnosis yet. And did this psychosis just come out of the blue? Like, what was there any kind of circumstances surrounding this first episode? Because I think what we know about psychosis is it isn't always triggered by schizophrenia or bipolar. There are lots of other triggers. It can be from severe stress, it can be from trauma, it can be postpartum psychosis, alcohol and drug induced, neurological problems. There's loads of triggers. And I wonder if there was a trigger for you. And actually, the other thing to say is that it's important to point out that not everybody that's been diagnosed with bipolar actually experiences psychosis, but for you that happened.
Yeah. So the first time it happened was like I didn't see it coming, but there were some like key indicators that probably could have like probably if I so I'll just talk you through it. The first one being depression. That year in 2011, I'd moved to London to do like a master's, and I ended up dropping out after I got ill. When I got ill, and that and I was doing it for the wrong reasons. I in my head, like I must have been 2011. How old would I have been? Like 23, maybe, around that age. And I thought that I needed to make something of myself. And I was like, the only way to do this is like to impress your parents and to have like status and all that kind of stuff, to earn a good wage, So I thought, right, I need to go and do a master's. And I picked like a music subject, and but ultimately it wasn't really what I wanted to do. What I've always wanted to do was write songs and play music, and every time I drift away from that goal, my like I just deteriorate. Like my happiness, my well-being decreases dramatically. Not dramatic. Well, it did dramatically in this instance, and so and also like I struggle. I'm not sure if I'm uh like when I was in school, I had like extra time in exams and that kind of thing, and I was again not given a diagnosis, just told I did a test, and they were like, "You need extra time," and so I got extra time. And I think at the time the like dyspraxia was mentioned, but like it was again like I've got no record of I've actually not got any records of what actually any diagnosis on that front. But basically, in school, in study, in academia, I struggle. I'm a very slow reader. I love reading, but I'm really slow. I'm slow at writing, weirdly, and actually I'm very slow at songwriting as well. But that's a whole other thing. And so I've got like I like to think I think I'm a relatively intelligent person, but I do struggle with learning. And I think I was overwhelmed when I got to university to do the masters, and uh, and I kind of found it challenging, and also being in London. And even though a lot of my friends were in London, we were all like dramatically far apart. Like some of them are in South London, I was at the top end of North London, basically Ilford. And which isn't even, it's like Essex. And everything took like an hour and change to get anywhere. And so I spent a lot of time on my own. I had a terrible housemate. And I just got deeper and deeper into depression. Like I'd have weeks where I wouldn't leave my room, and I would I'd only leave to go and get beers or food, and I think I watched every episode of The Wire. Like I don't recommend it. It's a great show, but I think you know I think when you're on like season 5 and you're like, you've not changed and you're just sort of like, I think I need help. Like, but that wasn't how my mind went. I was ashamed and I was embarrassed to be sad, um and I didn't reach out. Well, when I did reach out, I was off the cliff. I was free falling when I finally did reach out, and so I did get some counselling through the university, and I had this amazing therapist, best therapist I've ever met in my entire life. Yeah, just incredible, and it got me to recognize that I was depressed, like, and that I needed to work through it, and just having someone to talk to. Like I wasn't talking to anybody, and I at the same time all my life I've had a very kind of difficult relationship with like religion, and so when I was unwell, another trigger was I'd go to like this mega church in London, and I feel like Christianity is based on the premise that we're all failures, we're all sinners, and that we need to be forgiven. And it's like my feeling these days is like, forgiven for what exactly? Like, being human, is that really the only crime here? And so I was going through this process of feeling incredibly sad on the way to church, going to this church, being absorbed by the music and the euphoria of it, like these euphoric, like they got these mega anthems. It's like, it's like U2, but into Jesus, and you'd get really swept up in it, and because my whole life had been brought up in church, and I had all this guilt inside of me, and that I felt I felt guilty. And like for like when, and now as someone in my 30s, I look back and I wish I could say to that 23-year-old, buddy, you're absolutely fine. Like, this is this is nonsense, my friends. Like, chill. Like, but yeah, you know, so I had this education thing, I had this religious experience thing, I had all this like guilt and shame, and I felt like a failure. I'd there's even like I really did thought I thought my life was over. Like I thought there was nothing left for me to do here. And I was actually, like, if I'm being totally honest, I was actually suicidal. Anyway, so that was the lead, that was the build up to psychosis. So I had all these things going on in my mind, and I was a bit of a mess. Um, and and then it all just sort of came to a point. It would just kind of I just reached breaking point. Um, and you know, I was, yeah, that incredible, that loneliness, that depression, and then just the stress as well. Like I was really stressed out because I was like, I want to do better. I want to make this. I wanted to graduate. I wanted to succeed, um, and I just didn't have the capacity. Like I was just I was living on like 30 quid a week as well. It was fucked. Like, and like, and I just sort of, I was at the edge of my means, like uncomfortable. Um, like we had like a, like, couldn't pay our electric. Like it was just mat and gas. Like it was just really miserable living, and I just cracked like an egg. Like it was just spilled out, and I became very unwell. Luckily, my family were incredibly supportive, and I moved back to my parents. And it was a difficult time because I didn't know what to do. You know, like I remember describing, um, like looking into the future and just seeing black. Um, I actually get a bit emotional talking about it. To think I haven't actually thought that I didn't remember that phrase until just now. Like I would try and imagine what my life would be like in a year, and I just wouldn't see anything. Like I thought I was, like, you know, I didn't, you know, I never attempted suicide or anything like that properly. But I definitely couldn't see life beyond. Um, and so yeah, so that was what led to, that was the build up. That was the background to my first psychotic break. So I went hypomanic. So first of all, I decided to become a Christian. I'm not anymore, but at the time I was like, right, I'm gonna. And weirdly, you know, the desire to please your, like, you know, because my granddad was a bishop, and my parents are religious, and it served them amazingly, and they've and their and I don't doubt their genuine faith and experience, but for me it's not for me. And But I, you know, at the time I was like, you know, I'll become a Christian again, and um and and there's something to be said for, like, the feeling of elation you get when you feel forgiven, or you feel like you've had a breakthrough. And so I went whoosh, and then it just didn't stop. I just kept going higher and higher. I had all these ideas about, you know, well, what I'd do in the music industry, and I was like, right, I'm going to do this, and start a label, all this kind of stuff. And I had all these plans, and I was like, I'm going to return to playing music again. And I was gonna like, and weirdly, it was kind of, it was all sort of strange. It was all sort of schemes and plans to kind of like, what I think looking back were like pleasing other people, or like, and trying to like fit into like societal norms. So like I was like, oh, I'm not going to do original music. I'm going to do covers, and I'm going to like tour. I'm going to go to the club scene and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, you don't want to do any of that, mate. We are like, but it was all just like, what can I do to make money, to sort of please my family and all this kind of stuff. And anyway, I was just really high. And a massive one as well. Weirdly, nicotine. Like, I when I would be manic, I would chain smoke. like to the point where I'd feel like this is really gross, but essentially like a pint glass full of cigarette butts worth in a week kind of thing. Like I remember I had like this was back in, I was 23, like I was gross. Like like but like I'll be smoking in my room and I'll be putting these like putting these cigarettes out in like a coffee pot that was about the same size as a pint. And like and it was just like again, it was pretty fucked up. It was just, and I was so, I was manic, and so yeah, nicotine would stimulate me, and um, and that would, yeah, so that was a massive trigger, and that actually returned again. That chain smoking, became another when I had my breakdown in 2020. I was smoking an awful lot then as well, and that contributed to the process. The process is the process of a breakdown of the break, and so that's an interesting one for me. Like I didn't, um, yeah, the smoke. I don't smoke anymore. Like I went and did a course with like Alan Carr's Easy Way, and like yeah, just smack knocked on its head. But yeah, the chain smoking thing was gnarly. And so that was another factor.
Has being diagnosed with bipolar and experiencing kind of recurrent psychosis, has that affected your career in any way? So your music career, either in positive ways, so maybe unusually it's had some positive effects, and has there been any stigmas for you with having this diagnosis in the music industry?
Yeah, so so the positives, the fact that I'm doing music at all is probably thanks to um the having to stop everything. So when I got unwell in 2012, moved back to my family's house, back to my house, and I was just living with them, trying to figure out what I was going to do next. And the crisis team, Jason, my friend Jason, he's my friend now. He was a nurse when we met, and he basically was like, "You play guitar and you sing, right? Like, let's go to an open mic." And then he let me support his band. I think it was probably the first gig I did. We did a gig in Lincoln, and I had some songs, and I supported his band, and it was just a lovely experience, and that connection like just started ticking things away. So things started happening. So my sister, she played in a church band, and she said, "Oh, the drummer in this band, his kid needs guitar lessons. My brother can play guitar. He should teach. He should teach him." And so I started teaching this guy, this lad. He was my first ever guitar student, and actually now he's like shredding in a metal band. It's really cool. But I started teaching, and suddenly like things started to make more sense. It was like, oh, I can teach. And so I started building up more students, and I met this couple, Gary and Lucy, who were running a music charity, just an music education charity called the Music Workshop. And they were just so encouraging, and they were like, "Come teach for us." I went and taught for them, and we kind of built up students, and that kind of gave me the confidence. And so before I knew it, I was back doing music stuff. And then my best friends from school, Chris Boot and Ryan Buxton, and Dan Russell, we formed a band called High Hope Society, and I wasn't really playing any music. And they were like, "We're starting a band. You're in the band. We're gonna go to the studio, then like book it off, and we'll see you there." And so I was like, "Cool." So I started playing in High Hope Society, and it was a kind of like remote project. Like we were all, and my friend Mark Wiltshire, Mark was in Berlin, Mark was in Berlin, Chris was in Brighton, Dan was in like near outskirts of London, Ryan was in Cambridge, and I was in Nottinghamshire. And so we'd get together every so often, and we just make music together in the Blue Barn Studios in Ely in Cambridgeshire, near where we all grew up. And so, like, if I hadn't have been unwell, it wouldn't have allowed me the time to go and do those things. And it wouldn't have, like I wasn't really fit for work. Like I couldn't go work in an office, and I couldn't really do much. And so, but I could play my guitar, and I could sing, and I could write. And so I went and did that, and I could teach guitar as well. Like I've got patience for days. Like I really enjoy helping when it comes to like helping people learn like guitar, and also when especially people like an interest in songwriting and performing, I find that I'm really useful to those people on that journey. Like I'm very patient, I'm really supportive, and all I'm ever doing is returning the favors that were done for me as a child. So I had like a great music teacher called Richard Batty, who would like I'd write a song and he'd close his eyes and listen to it and say like that was amazing, like go write another one, and I so yeah so if I hadn't have become unwell, I wouldn't have done any of that. I would have probably tried to like be an A&R guy or not an A&R guy. I don't know, like what I would have just might have gone into would have working in an office on the sidelines rather than actually being an artist. I wouldn't have chosen the path of an artist. And yeah, so yeah, I kind of so that was a huge positive. It kind of changed the trajectory of my entire life. And the whether or not there are any stigmas, it's hard to tell. Like, interestingly, like I'm a black guy making folk music, so that's probably more of a thing than bipolar. Even I think sometimes some doors just don't open, and there's it's that's a difficult one. Like I never outside of like my local area. So when I lived in Newark, there was like a little open mic that in this tiny little kind of not quite a micro pub, but it was a very small pub. And and this was like a huge part of my recovery every Sunday. So like this is 2012, so right in the belly of the beast. Like I was just fresh out of this big psychotic break. I would go with my brother to the pub, the pub called the Castle, and it was us. My brother's a few years older than me. It was me and him, and then some other folks, and then the majority of people there were sort of in their 60s and retired, and it was just like it was so much fun. It was like they didn't care at all. So like they get on the beers. I don't think I was drinking at the time. I think I was drinking like alcohol-free stuff, and we'd eat cheese and we play songs like and and it was really incredible, especially for my development and confidence. It reminded me how much I enjoyed playing live, and I was part of a community. Like every Sunday for like a year, I would go to this open mic, and it was amazing. And yeah, but interesting when I started releasing music. Like I said, the thing about the being a black artist playing folk music, the people that welcomed me first were like house DJs and jazz guys. It was really an unusual. It was an unusual. I think as well, like I did take a lot of influence from bands like the Cinematic Orchestra, and like Patrick Watson and Grey Reverend, and who else, like John O'Mcleary and all those kind of cats. Like I'm no John O'Mcleary, but 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 uh but yeah, the folk world, and Jamie Woon as well, like
Mm.
that was a big one. But yeah, like, I was never, I wasn't seen as part of like the folk world, and getting those doors. So maybe that I always thought that I never paid it any mind really. I kind of have just a general rule of I go where I'm welcome, and so and I don't really think about the closed doors, if that makes sense. I just try and go where I'm welcome. But yeah, so stigma is to do with mental health. Music has always been really great for being a welcoming atmosphere. I don't know what people say behind my back, but I do know that it's not, if it's been a hindrance, it's only been a hindrance as much as it's been a blessing. Like I started writing about my experiences in my first records in 2014 and 15. Those two records, a brief introduction to failure and the lingering effects of disconnection. The that was essentially like, those songs were sort of written around those times when I was incredibly depressed, or if they weren't written around those times, they were written, they were inspired by those times, and I inspired's a weird word to use for that. Like I was just writing, that was just what was coming out of me at the time. Like I didn't set about to be like, oh, I'm going to write a song about being depressed. It was like, I'm going to write a song. Turns out I'm depressed, and then so that a brief introduction to failure was the first EP, and then the second EP was called The Lingering Effects of Disconnection, and that had a song called Sandwiches on it. And Sandwiches, I do this thing whenever I write something that's remotely catchy. I tend to make it as I tend to try and go as deep as possible. It's not always easy, but I think that's kind of how I prefer to work as a writer. Like if you're going to dance, I'm gonna make you think too, the kind of thing, or feel something. And maybe it's just for me. It's not so much what the audience experiences, but this song Sandwiches. We had this kind of like pretty light and breezy guitar part. It was kind of a bop, and then the second half of the song, I just sort of was like, I just found an opening to talk about psychosis for the first time in writing, and I just described what it's like to, or at least I don't know if it was the worst night of my life, but I've said it, but how I've described it before is I then just turned it into like a diary entry from the worst part of my worst night of my life, where there was one particular experience with when I was in psychosis in 2012, where it felt like I had this weird thing with a tap. Like I broke a tap in my parents' house, and I couldn't make it stop running, and I remember it was just kind of like I was just falling apart. And my memories of this situation was, I was in the bathroom and I looked out the window, and this is in the psychosis. I hope maybe to come with a trigger warning in case people have been through similar things, because it is quite harrowing. So I thought there were like snipers everywhere trying to shoot me. That was like a major thing. Like I thought my life was under threat. And I remember standing in the window took a lot of bravery. Like I was really frightened. And then I remember getting into like the fetal position and staring out the window. And in my mind, and I don't know if this, like, again, like psychosis will make you like touch the table to check it's real. But I remember just watching the sun go down and come up, and 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 I didn't move, and um and that was the experience that Sandwiches came from. So I wrote about that particular night. Like I thought I was Satan, you know, like which is like, it's a bit of, maybe crazy is a hurtful word to use, but it was mental. It was maybe we use the worst word now, but it was it was harrowing. And but yeah, so I wrote about those experiences in that song, and yeah, like, so as a writer, it, there's that thing of write what you know, and if you know some gnarly stuff, then that's what you're gonna get, and so yeah, back to, is it a hindrance? Has there been some positives? Yeah, kind of. There's been some kind of both, and also, like, I used to be really worried about getting excited. So, and when I say excited, I mean like playing a show. I was thinking sometimes you'll play a gig and the rush will be like, whoa, kind of like euphoric. And I was very fearful when I started gigging again of that. Like, I was like, oh man, I don't want to get super high. Like, I love playing live, but I don't want to. I'd have to like wind down after big shows. Like, I'd have to have like a good hour of just like reading the news, to like just sort of bring myself back to baseline. Not so much a problem these days. I don't know if I've just got old and jaded, but there's still some moving shows. Like, an audience made me cry last week, like from their like from just their response to me. Did we speak after I played Birmingham and Leamington Spa last week? I can't remember if we did.
Maybe just before, I think.
Nice.
Yeah.
Fair play. Well, like, those shows, I decided to be like the first show was cool. I was quite nervous. I was supporting with Angeline Morrison, who's just an incredible folk artist. And she created the sense of safety in the room and on stage for me. It was just really special. But the second night we played, so I played Kitchen Garden Cafe in Birmingham on Sunday, and that was great, and the audience were amazing. But in Leamington Spa, we played Temperance Cafe, which is like a 55 room capacity folk club. And I just decided to be as like candid as possible. So I did my thing of like not talking for the first couple of songs and keeping it fairly like keeping it fairly like, I don't know what the word is. I just don't talk in the first two songs. And then I was like, right, rest of the songs I'll have a chat. And I just told the stories behind the tunes. And there's like a new song I've got, which is again sort of an existential look at what it's like to have bipolar, I guess. And then there was another song I've written, which was about my experience learning about Britain's racial past, and how that's affected me personally and emotionally and mentally and stuff, and I was just really honest and open, and I didn't hold back anything, like, and it was just a really, but like the crowd, there was a togetherness in the room that I haven't felt before at a show. It was really like we went on a journey together. Like, it was, and I really hadn't thought about it like this before. Like, if you take the audience on a journey with you, and you're not trying to, you're not like trying to be like, we're going on a journey, guys, come on board. Like, if you're just like, hey, we're here together, let's breathe the same air, kind of thing. We went on this journey together, and at the end of the set, like, the set told a story, and I kind of told this story unintentionally about my journey up to that point. And the end of my final song, the applause was so intense it made me cry.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, and that's never happened to me before. Like, I played the London Palladium and felt like overwhelmed and just like in awe, and felt loads of gratitude, but I've not been moved emotionally. Like, it really, like, it shook me, and then they demanded another song, and which is a support artist isn't a thing. Like support acts don't do encores. Uh, it's just absolutely not a thing. And you know, you keep a tight set, you're teeing up the show, and but I asked for an encore, and I played it, and I made loads of mistakes in the encore. But the point was that, like, it kind of woke me up to this idea that if I can create a sense of safety on stage in which I can share my experiences, and that that can be the benefit to the audience, and it can bolster the gig experience to the point where people feel connected to the music and connected to me, and it's just something really I didn't expect it, and something really special happened. um you know, yeah, and so yeah, I'm still figuring out how to do that again. Like, I don't quite know, like, if there was a magic thing, if it was just the circumstances, or if it's repeatable, if it I don't know what the effects was on like my health if I keep doing that. Like, I don't know if I can be that vulnerable all the time. Um, but it was probably the best gig I've ever done. So
Wow, I mean that's absolutely incredible. And you know, you were your authentic self, and like you say, you took people on this incredible, wonderful journey. And you know, it's incredible that you've been able to use your platform to spread awareness about mental health conditions, and you know, to demographics, younger demographics, who might think that having a diagnosis is potentially something that's career ending, or you know, they might feel suicidal because of having experienced psychosis and being scared about experiencing it again. So you are the living, breathing proof that actually your life isn't over when you're diagnosed with a mental health condition or you experience psychosis. It can actually benefit you in beautiful ways as well. When you experience these things, where did you look for help? Did you have a great support network around you in like in terms of like family and friends? Were there any charities that you sought help from? Obviously you've talked about your GP and hospital and things like that, but who was your biggest source of support?
So when I first became unwell, it was my family, and then the NHS, and then some friends as well. Actually, like, you know, so for example, like, the religion thing is really complicated, right? Because on the one hand, like, it's probably done a number on my noggin, and like, it's made me believe all sorts of things about myself that I don't think hold to be true. However, the compassion that I've received from people, and the support I've been given from that community, um, has been incredible. And like, for example, like, my mum and dad, they had their friends from church when I was in psychosis. They would come and sit and spend time with me. Like, there was a couple, Kerry and David, who would, like, I was like, particularly when I thought I was the devil, they would come and hang out, and they'd be like, "How you doing? What's on your mind?" And they, you know, uh, and all I remember is just, you know, and we talk, and then we had other, you know, so. And there were a lot of my parents' friends who came and spent time with me, and you know, and um, that was really, really beautiful.
Mm, mm. Yeah, so just having that sense of people around you that normalized how you were feeling.
Yeah, yeah, and then my own friends as well, like my bandmates in the High Hope Society,
Mm.
um, all of those guys. Um, I'm gonna just bear me 1 second.
No, no, take your time.
Yeah, so my bandmates in High Hope Society, my best friends Chris and Ryan. So yeah, Chris Boot, Ryan Buxton, Dan Russell, Mark Wiltshire, um, they came out and they kind of were like, let's play music. Jason, who I mentioned before, he was working for the NHS. Like that support was vital to my recovery and journey and return to making music. Yeah. I forgot what your question was.
No, you've answered it perfectly. It was just about support networks, and yeah, you've amazing.
Yeah.
And then my final question really is, what would you say to somebody, whether they're in the music industry or they're not, that has had a recent diagnosis or has just had their first experience of psychosis? What would you say to them to make them feel slightly safer and okay with what's just happened?
I would just say it's going to be okay. Like it's one of those things. That statement feels so it feels so inadequate to just say to someone, you'll be fine. Because realistically, you might not be. There's like I've met people who've been on similar journeys who've had a much tougher time than I have, and but the first thing I do is just listen. Just I think just being there for someone. Maybe this is advice for people who are near people who are going through psychosis and bipolar and depression. But creating a sense of safety where someone doesn't feel shame and is able to express what they're going through is really important. Now, people actually going through bipolar and going through psychosis, it's really important to be with people that have your absolute best interests at heart. So one of my best friends is a musician and a vicar called George Trevor White, and like that support of when I was unwell, him coming to see me and hang out. Again, my friend Ryan, Chris, the same old crew, and back again in my life, and my other friends, like I used to play in a band called Cat Milk. The lead singer Alex and her partner Adam, who plays in the band called Divorce, who are amazing. They'd come and see me, and we'd all spend time together. And they went to see me when I was unwell, and my advice would be, find those people in your life that have your absolute best interests at heart and who want the best for you, and just don't be afraid to be vulnerable around them. Don't try and hide it. Like it's useless. It's like trying to hide a bomb. It's like while it's going off. It's just not. It's like you can't do it, and it'll only make the experience much worse. Like the psychosis thing, like when you're in psychosis, wow, like I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. Like you have, like I used to joke around sometimes saying that I had a great time when I was psychotic, but no one else did. Like and in truth, I did not have a good time.
Yeah.
Like I thought there was a lion about to eat me. I thought I was going to get shot. I thought, I thought I was the devil. I thought I was, I had all, I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating. I was in like the most anxious state I've ever been in. And so, like fight or flight, like imagining you're going to get killed, like, and you've got to, it's just crazy. And so there's not much. I don't think there's anything you can do once you're in it, once you're like, other than sort of pad the landing. So being near people that can help. And if you have the awareness, and I don't know if this is possible, and I wonder if I can, and as I get more educated on bipolar, and I become more aware of the condition and how I experience it, I hope that I'll be able to recognize when I'm sliding into it, when I'm becoming more manic, and take evasive action. Like that's what I really hope. Um, like it's the worst thing to kind of like to figure out, because you kind of, how do you know when you've successfully done it? Well, it's not a happy time. Like you can't, it's not something you ever want to like, that's a, yeah, you can't really test that out. But the other side as well is figuring out how to manage the condition. So, for example, no drugs, alcohol, limit it. I've gone this year like I tend not to drink at shows. I had a few beers this week, but I hadn't, up until this week I hadn't had a beer until since January, and then before January I hadn't had a beer before the October before. So like I try not to drink in general, and I prefer it because it just sort of keeps me level. Although I do love beer, I love beer, but it's just not. I think if you don't want to be depressed, like hangovers will just send you over the edge and all that kind of stuff. So you've got to be really careful of that kind of stuff. So alcohol, be very careful with it. Yeah, hard no on drugs just in general. Even though, I wish I could. I wish I had the. Maybe that's the difficulty of music. Like drugs and alcohol have been romanticized to a point where you think like I know people that think smoking is like the coolest thing ever, and it's horrible. And it's like there's nothing good about it, but like it's got this kind of like it's got this romanticism behind it that I still every now and again think, oh wow, that's like really cool, or like it's a bit sexy and all that. You've got all these things in your head about it. Like we were playing in Paris. I do session work for a band called Do Nothing, who are just like one of the best bands around, like incredible. And I'm not, I nearly didn't take the gig because I wanted to keep watching them live. I didn't want to be on stage. I wanted to be in the audience. But again, like we were played in Paris, and I was just like looking around all these French people smoking. And I was like, damn, that's so cool, man. These guys are just like, they're just the coolest people. And again, so yeah, so not smoking, not drinking, no drug taking. The next thing to figure out is sleep. Sleep is probably the biggest factor, to be honest. Like, and it's one of the hardest things to figure out. Like, I'm having to recenter myself at the moment to try and make sure that I just kind of I take care of myself better. So sleep and exercise, those are the two big ones. So if you're sleeping well and you're exercising, that's really good. I currently this week had a terrible sleep and I'm not exercising. So I need to, that's kind of, I've started doing Capture 5K, but like I'm avoiding it at the moment. I need to just kind of get brave again and go for it. But yeah, so yeah, sleep and exercise is really important. It's all kind of stuff that everyone always says, and it's really hard. Like I would also say, just be really kind to yourself and forgive yourself for not being perfect. Like I just said, sleep and exercise, and I'm changing jobs. Like I'm going back to being freelance, which is frightening because like you never really know how you're going to survive. Before the last time I was freelance, I had like a record deal, and it was like I was kind of fairly certain I'd be fine. This time around, there's no record deal. There's no kind of like, it's just kind of hustle, and that's going to be really hard. But I'm making like a business plan and all this kind of stuff, and it's gonna be fun. But and but the but yeah, those transitions can be really difficult. And then I've got to move house as well, which is super stressful. And so like sleeping and exercising is going to become more and more important as things get more stressful. So yeah, so that's a long answer. I hope that's helpful. But yeah, be kind to yourself for not like being perfect. And just give yourself space to feel your feelings, like when like I was so ashamed of being depressed. Like I can't even articulate how terrible that is. That like, you feel embarrassed that you're sad, or you feel embarrassed that you're depressed and lethargic, and so you you beat yourself up and then feel more depressed and lethargic, and then you just you dig that hole deeper and deeper. Like the shame thing is like it's a real shit. Like you kind of you I've got no time for shame. Like that would probably be one of the biggest things. Like I've heard people with people who go through mental health things like kind of talk about their futures and say like, oh, I don't want to have kids, or I don't want to do this and pass it on, all this kind of stuff. I think I disagree with that. Like I've not got any kids or anything like that, but I like this in my mind, this is all just part of the human condition, and now we have words to articulate it. So I can call it bipolar, I can call it depression. I don't think they're new. I think they are I think it becomes a part of your personality, and it's a part of our experiences, and there is, even though there's great pain in it, there is a lot of beauty, like I've described, in terms of the kindnesses that were done to me in that time, and how it helped me redirect my life towards things that I was actually passionate about. And so yeah, I would heartily tell shame to fuck off. And yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I completely agree with you. And what a journey of self-discovery you've been through with, being diagnosed and experiencing these things. So Daudi, thank you so much. It's been absolutely wonderful hearing your journey and your career today. And I know that you've got so much more that you're going to be bringing out, and you're incredible. So thank you. Also, just to make people aware that there are charities that you can contact. There is Bipolar UK if you're experiencing bipolar symptoms, psychosis. Call your GP, make an immediate appointment. If you can't get hold of your GP, go straight to A&E if it's severe. And as Daudi says, just talk about it. There is no shame in having a mental health condition, in feeling down. Like you say, it's part of life. Yeah, so thank you so much. And we'll see you soon.
All right, nice one.